Hello, and welcome back to my ongoing coverage of the OceanGate Titan submersible tragedy. As I've mentioned in a previous upload, it is not only the numerous testimonies of the public hearing that I will be covering on the channel, but also the documentation released by the US Coast Guard on its website. So, while I'm currently working on the next testimony video in the background, I wanted to start looking through some of the documentation and highlight some things along the way. I will also leave a link in the description that will take you to the Coast Guard's page should you wish to read even further in depth on any of the documents covered. I'm going to cover the documents in a day-by-day order in which they were shared by the Coast Guard. This will both sync with the testimonies I'm covering to which they are related, and will also ensure I don't skip any notable documents along the way. This video covers documents uploaded to the Coast Guard's page during days 1 and 2 of the public hearing. I wanted to begin with a quality inspection report carried out in 2018. Though the existence of this document and contents of it are not new material to anyone who has been following this investigation, I still wanted to include it, as it ties in with the previous 2 videos, those being the testimony of a former OceanGate Director of Engineering. The Director of Engineering is also named frequently on the report itself. Though the author's name has been removed, I think it's fair to say that most of us know that it's David Lockridge, whose own testimony I look forward to covering in the near future, as I have a feeling it will be a real eye-opener. For those who haven't seen the inspection report before, it lists numerous issues found with the Titan submersible, and what needed to be done to rectify them. Of the viewport, front O-ring, and fasteners, the report states, the viewport was installed by OceanGate Engineering Department prior to this inspection. No thorough inspection of acrylic or O-ring could be carried out on inspection date. The report calls for documentation to be issued to Operations Department, showing completed pressure test results and associated documentation from Hydrospace Group. It is then stated that requests for these records to be produced were denied by the Director of Engineering. Furthermore, when highlighting the front dome of the vessel, the report cites a plunge hole at the 12 o'clock position, a result of machining a groove, which itself was machined as a dovetail, not within standard design parameters. This is actually covered in further detail during the next testimony from the hearing, which is the video I'm currently working on. But it just goes to show how, already, a single document is tying into the testimonies of 2 people and bringing a clearer picture together. Among various other issues found, the report moves on to the carbon fibre hull, where it states that the hull could not be inspected externally due to the rhino coating having been applied under the direction of OceanGate Engineering Department. The corrective measure for this is clearly stated, that being NDT, or non-destructive testing, again, a thing already spoken about during the hearing, and a thing now confirmed to have not taken place, despite plans for it. The report goes further on this, reading, as we have all seen, the carbon hull end sections that were machined off after the completion of the winding show very visible signs of delamination and porosity within the carbon. I understand that most carbon manufacturers expect some, but not an excess of porosity, hence why they too machine off ends after winding. With our application of the hull seeing such immense pressures not yet experienced on any known carbon-hulled vehicle, we run the risk of potential interlaminar fatigue due to pressure cycling. This especially if we do have imperfections in the hull itself. We should fully endorse what the company initially set out to do and carry out a fully non-destructive inspection of both the hull and also the bond line between the carbon hull and both segments 1 and 2. The results will provide us all with the knowledge that either the hull is indeed intact or there may be deficiencies. This also applies to the bond line to verify the adhesion process. Just like with the front dome of Titan, inspection on the rear dome found a plunge hole, this time at the 6 o'clock position, and again this was due to a double dovetail O-ring groove that had been machined. The final page of the report shows a sample of Titan's flooring material and states, "A sample of the flooring material was set alight for approximately 3 seconds outside of the OceanGate facility, and the material continued to burn after removing the ignition source. The burning material released toxic fumes, and the resultant melted remains continued to burn as they dropped to the asphalt below. It should also be noted a sample of the vinyl tape wrapped internally within Cyclops 2, or Titan, emits highly toxic gases upon ignition." So those are just a few of the issues found, with numerous more filling 4 pages of the report. Please feel free to pause the video if you care to read them, or again, you can find this document via the link in the description. As can be seen, many of the actions needed to rectify problems were assigned to the Director of Engineering, who, during his testimony, described the findings of this quality report as a surprise. Shortly after making this report in 2018, David Lockridge was removed from the company. Next is a document solely for images of the Titan vessel, some of which I have not seen before prior to the hearing. This document is well worth checking out as it contains images of the carbon fibre application process, as well as other aspects of the sub, from the domes, viewport and rings, to Titan's interior and computer systems, including the now famous gaming controller. We also see the rhino lining around the carbon fibre, which is featured in David Lockridge's report when it made an inspection of the hull impossible. Next, we have an OceanGate dive operations risk assessment. This document takes into account possible safety hazards that could be encountered during an operation, assessing their risk levels, as well as measures that must be taken to avoid them. These are things like slips and trips awareness, or even sunburn, proper manual handling, and things of that nature. If you're interested in reading more into this, 2 more documents are also available which complement the risk assessment. They are a health, safety and environment manual, and also a pilot training and training task book for the Cyclops 1 submersible, both of which are too lengthy and in-depth for this video, but, as I said, well worth a read if it's something that would interest you. The next document is the Design and Analysis Report by Spencer Composites, the company responsible for the manufacturing of the carbon fibre hull. This is also a lengthy document, being 46 pages, with all of the information you could possibly want about the makeup of the Titan submersible, including the vessel design basis table, which was shown and covered in the testimony of Tony Nissen, former head of engineering. As also was covered in that testimony, this report was based on Titan's domes being made from grade 5 titanium, which, after problems with sourcing and time, would eventually be reduced by OceanGate to grade 3 instead. Next come several documents of correspondence. The first is a letter from Stockton Rush to company stakeholders at the time when testing was being done on a 3rd scale model. The letter reads, "As many of you already know, we conducted a pressure test on a 1/3 scale model of our filament wound carbon fibre hull. At a pressure of 4,285 psi, the pressure at approximately 10,000 feet, one of the hemispherical end caps failed just outboard of one of the large stainless steel inserts. While the failure was unexpected at this depth, it was well short of design operating depth of 20,000 feet. Even Boeing, with all their supercomputer capacity, admitted they were unable to analyse such a structure. Fortunately, there was no damage to the main cylindrical section, which is the critical part. After an initial review by Spencer Composites, it is believed that the hemisphere buckled, which is the reason our strain gauges did not give us warning about the failure. For the next test, we will include acoustic monitoring, which should give a better warning of this type of failure. Being able to consistently predict a pressure vessel failure is key to understanding we have a safe system that can operate for many years in varied conditions. Our decision tree now leads us to reconsider the original concept of using titanium or a similar metal for our end caps. This is a far more expensive approach, but metals are much better understood and predictable materials. Early next year, we plan to use very thick flat steel plates in place of the hemispheres to test the main cylinder to its design capacity. With a successful test of that component, we can proceed to manufacture the full-sized hull and use titanium, aluminium or steel hemispheres. Next is an OceanGate update newsletter from April 2016. This outlined the progress that OceanGate had made, citing Cyclops 2 pressure tests, as well as their plans to survey the wreck of the Andrea Doria. It also outlines their future plans, with the development of Cyclops 2 or Titan being a priority. Also mentioned is an expansion of the team, with the Director of Engineering being among those hired. The next document was shown during Mr. Nissen's testimony, that being an OceanGate blog from 2019. This was posted during the testing of Titan in the Bahamas. The biggest takeaway from the document occurs in paragraph 4, with it being unsure as to whether the claim that the dive was validated by a representative from Lloyd's Register was actually true. The last piece of correspondence is a mission specialist update for the planned Titanic expeditions, written after the testing in the Bahamas. This document also played a key part in Mr. Nissen's testimony, as, by this point, the hull of the submersible was rendered unsalvageable by a large crack. Though this is not mentioned in the update, rather, issues with gaining a ship for operations were cited instead. And finally, the last document of this video is also related to mission specialists. It is a mission specialist description outlining the various duties required of anyone signing up to one of OceanGate's missions. These include 9 days aboard the ship, with manual handling and lifting, keeping watch, supporting research staff and data logging, as well as partaking in communication and tracking support. This is a great document to look through, as it gives you a real feel of someone who's about to embark on the 9-day expedition and what would be expected of you. So, that concludes this first look at the documentation provided by the US Coast Guard. I will be covering further documents in the future, as well as testimonies that were given at the hearing. If you're not already subscribed, please do so to keep updated with future uploads. Until next time.